I'm Mark Seifter.
And I'm Linda Zayas Palmer.
And this is Arcane Mark. Welcome everyone to Class Chat Wizard. Today we're going to be finishing up the core rulebook class chats by talking about the Wizard class, the last alphabetically.
Wizard.
Hey, it's Ezrin up there.
Ezrin was wondering why we took so long to get to this thing.
It's all because of votes. Votes tapered off for class chats just before the end of the core rulebook. But now, Wizard will take its rightful place as the mastermind behind the other core rulebook classes. So
this piece right here is the splash page art that appears in the beginning of the Wizard section.
That's right. Wizard, which comes from the same root as the word wise, although ironically wisdom is not their key ability score. Despite this, it's intelligence. So here's the sort of flavor description of a wizard. You are an eternal student of the arcane secrets of the universe, using your mastery of magic to cast powerful and devastating spells. You treat magic like a science, cross-referencing the latest texts on practical spellcraft with ancient esoteric tomes to discover and understand how magic works. Yet magical theory is vast, and there's no way you can study it all. You either specialize in one of the 8 schools of magic, gaining deeper understanding of the nuances of those spells above all others, or favor a broader approach that emphasizes the way all magic comes together at the expense of depth. So that's sort of overall what it is to be a wizard, but let's do what we do in all these class chats and talk about what the core rulebook says you might do during different phases of the game and what people might think about you. So during combat encounters, you're likely try to stay out of the fray, carefully judging when to use your spells. You save your most powerful magic to incapacitate threatening foes, and use your cantrips when only weaker foes remain. When enemies pull out tricks like invisibility or flight, you answer with spells like Glitter Dust or Earthbind, leveling the field for your allies. During social encounters, you provide a well of knowledge about arcane matters and solve arguments with logic. While exploring, you locate magical auras and determine the arcane significance of magical writings or phenomena you uncover. When you run across an unusual obstacle to further exploration, you probably have a scroll that will make it easier to overcome. In downtime, you learn new spells, craft magic items, or scribe scrolls for your party, and seek out new and exciting formulas in addition to spells. You might even forge scholarly connections and establish a school or guild of your own. You might have an unquenchable intellectual curiosity about how everything in the world around you works, magic in particular. You might believe fervently that your school of magic is superior if you're a specialist, or that true mastery of magic requires knowledge of all schools if you're a universalist. And you might use esoteric jargon and technical terms to precisely describe the minutiae of magic effects, even though the difference is probably lost on other people. Now, others probably consider you to be incredibly powerful and potentially dangerous. They probably fear what your magic can do to their minds, bodies, and souls, and ask that you avoid casting spells in polite company, as few can identify whether one of your spells is harmless or malevolent until it's too late. And they probably assume you can easily solve all their problems, from dangerous weather to poor crop yields, and ask for you for spells that can help them get whatever they desire.
Alright, Ezrin, stop casting a spell at my head.
Okay. We've done it. Ezrin is no longer casting a spell at Linda's head. So wizards' proficiencies are not the greatest in things other than magic, because they're only trained in perception, fortitude, and reflex. They're expert in will. They've got Arcana and 2+ intelligence modifier more skills. They've got uniquely bad access to training in weapons, which is not even all simple weapons. It's just like 5 weapons and unarmed attacks. And then they're untrained in armor, trained in unarmored defenses, and of course trained in arcane spells, their attacks, and DCs. So that's sort of where you're at with a snapshot of proficiencies for wizards. But wizards also have, in addition to their spells, which...
Zathos, I think, is saying that Ezrin was being helpful. He was just casting air conditioning.
Yeah, I mean, air conditioning can help, especially when it gets hot.
Alright, Ezrin, you can keep casting air conditioning.
Wizards, in addition to their spells, have quite a few class features, even that they just start off with. So they start off you have all of the things everyone normally has is like an ancestry and background, but you also get an arcane bond, which you can drain to get an additional spell. You have an arcane school, which either is going to give you one additional spell of every level from your school, or let you drain the arcane bond at every spell level instead of just once per day, for inherently bigger flexibility. And you're gonna have, in addition to all of that, you also have an arcane thesis, which is going to give you a special ability for spellcasting. So you really wind up having more than most other spellcasters have in terms of like different options and different spells during the day, and that's going to be a theme with Wizard.
Yeah, and the arcane list winds up being larger than other lists because of the needs of the greedy wizard and all of the different schools.
That's right. Because you could be like, well, necromancy. A lot of your spells have life essence or spiritual essence, right? Like, you should probably not be on the arcane list, which is the kind of matter and mind one, and then the necromancer wizard's like, but I'm supposed to be the best necromancer.
Oh, no, the necromancer voice.
Yeah, that's the necromancer wizard, and then the necromancer wizard says, put more on the arcane list. And then
please.
And then more spells get on the arcane list for necromancy, for example. Like, a lot of the other schools just legitimately have things that have a large percentage that would be on the arcane list, but I think if it weren't for the necromancer wizard, like, a lot fewer necromancy spells would be on the arcane list naturally. But the necromancer is very traditional. It's just a very traditional story.
Well, and also transmutation stopped having like literally every spell ever compared to like first edition.
That's
like,
not about the wizard. That was an issue in first edition where the core rulebook in first edition transmutation had balanced options. It's just that when you're writing new spells in first edition and books after the core rulebook, it was just like, oh, this new spell does a thing. What is that doing? It's changing something somewhere. Let's just make it transmutation. And so if you look and you like graph it out, transmutation started with like a nearly balanced amount, but then it wound up having like 3 to 4 times as many as other spell lists moving onward, just because there wasn't the same attempt as was made in the core rulebook to balance the spell lists, and just naturally things are like, well, that's changing a thing. I mean, because like everything changes
everything
something.
Is changing
so
thing,
you could just throw anything into transmutation if you want, if you're not like
specifically planning
to not put it in transmutation.
The transmutation wizard says maybe that means the transmutation should have more spells.
That's right. Hi, Paizo Orgplay.
Hi.
So that's basically what's going on. And wizards have a spell book where they put down their different spells. And there's an example spell book, the structure and interpretation of arcane magic, which is all about, it has good starter skills and gives you good habits in arcane research. And that's kind of where wizards are at. They get up different proficiencies and eventually become master in will saves and of course legendary in spellcasting and get 10th level spells. But in terms of class features, they don't really get much more than that because they already have more spell casting than pretty much anybody else. Even the sorcerer, who does get an additional spell slot each day, doesn't have the equivalent of the arcane bond, and you'll see as we get into the feats, wizards have even more ways to get even more spells. So wizards can easily wind up with a number of spells that can be like pushing nearly double in terms of like the good spells, especially it will be double of like a druid, for example, or a bard.
Oh, thanks for the tier 3 sub, Numbat.
Yeah, thanks so much.
You've been subscribed for 26 months now.
Wow. Thank you. So, let's talk.
You've been here with us since the very beginning.
That's true. Let's talk a little bit about wizard feats, because absolutely wizards tend to be like a linchpin of their group. I know in our War for the Crown group, right, our wizard that was in your, like, Linda's fighter definitely was, like, very, very important and held the line, and sometimes was part of, like, not so great plans made by the wizard and the alchemist, where Linda's character would try to tank something that they were splitting the ooze into, like, a million pieces. Or there were times where Linda, like, they got attacked by two encounters at once, and Linda, like, held a door that one encounter was attacking behind while the rest of the party fought the other encounter. So her fighter did a lot of cool stuff, but the wizard was usually the one who did something so clutch that it was like, okay, this wins the entire dungeon, or this deals with the enemy's weird escape plan, or this figures things out. Like, when one of the dungeons, when they were level 3, had DC 30 locks, because it was just like, yeah, we don't want you to get in to this way, you have to go in the front, and it's super, enemies are super ready for it. Like, you know, it was the wizard with knock and assisting who made sure that the rogue went from, I need a natural 20, and anything 10 or less is going to break my picks, to I'm on average slightly expected to get in here on a single roll, but I need multiple rolls. And then the wizard's like, well, I'm a diviner. Here, we're going to pre-roll outside of the enemy's base until we know the first one's a success. And then that went into a random walk that was expected to win.
And
did.
Yeah, and at higher levels, the wizards, one of the wizard's favorite tricks was to disintegrate or otherwise magically make our own door, and then hang a curtain to stop wind, and then, like, put illusions over it so that nobody would be able to tell that we had made a giant hole in the wall. That made navigation much easier.
Nosmal Feet Podcast has a cool build for a necromancer that's a Dhampir druid, beastmaster, undead companion, witch, multi-talented, and animate dead. That's really cool. That's really cool. Zathos, you're right. Zathos, knock is an amazing spell for one. Knock is just generally very good when you need to get into a lock. And yeah, wizards being their own doors is very important. Like, yeah, there was an incorporeal creature that retreats from the room that it's in into, like, a different floor that's very hard to access to, and then tries to heal up. The wizard just disintegrated through, and the party dropped down and finished it off.
Yeah, Cackle and Everless for No Small Feats build. That totally makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, there was the time that the wizard just got a hunch that there was something going on to the west of where you guys were, and so did a Dimension Door 5, and then just I said how far to the west, and he picked an amount, and it legitimately was, like, exactly the distance that went into a secret room with a hidden artifact that could resurrect people.
Yep.
And I was like, wow, that was really impressive. But he also knew that there were people who were watching who would be sus if he disappeared, so he left behind an illusory image of himself, because he has Conceal Spell. There's another time the party was attacking an enemy fort by infiltration, and they had done really, really well using Follow the Expert and Mundane Disguise, because there's a lot of magical protections against other kinds of infiltration. But the enemies had, unfortunately, the one thing the party didn't know was that the enemies had a specific alarm that would trigger based on their personally entering the fort. They didn't know where they were, but they knew they were in there. So they had the enemies had their diviner come to a central location, and everyone had to go past their diviner and get checked to see if it was the PCs. And there were some other procedures they had. So the wizard teamed up with the bard, and the wizard did a concealed fireball after the bard made a distraction by doing a melodious spell that turned out to be an illusion of just the party blatantly being the party there. And the wizard fireballed the stables, because they knew that, like, a lot of the higher ranking people were knights and cavaliers, and there were horses that they would care about. And then had the party look like it was going to run off to the barracks to, like, slaughter sleeping soldiers. And then they went the opposite way, and they actually went to the diviner who was checking people, but out of order when a lot of the things weren't going to go on, to figure out if they could either secure cooperation or take care of the diviner before the diviner revealed that they were actually them. So, like, the wizard was always constantly enabling whatever they were going to do.
We have a joke that you think you'd appreciate here. Players who teleport past an adventurous challenge, they have a really warped sense of humor.
Yeah, the great part was, like, he came back, like, he didn't teleport past the challenge, he just found, like, this really secret hidden thing that the party, might not necessarily have found, period. Just in the middle of doing something
You don't know,
else.
Small Speed? One of my favorite experiences in Pathfinder Society was when the party decided to teleport to the very end of the dungeon and then do it in reverse.
We scryed on the NPC we were supposed to save, discovered that she was not in the settlement she was supposed to be in, but was in fact in an underneath cave. Figured out where that cave was, so we knew both the location, and we actually figured out the setup because it was an excavation the Pathfinders had funded, and scrying doesn't usually give you enough to know the setup, but we were able to research, and Leonard was like, yeah, there's no reason you wouldn't know the setup of the excavation that the Pathfinders literally had funded, so I can give you that, and you now know she's there. So we then teleported there directly, and it was literally the final encounter, and we had not done anything else. So Linda was like, give me 5 to 10 minutes. And then we wound up running it backwards. We did the final boss immediately, and then we had to take all these researchers we were supposed to have just saved at the end and then just go to the ending, and we had to escort them through all of the encounters backwards, and one of the encounters was just like 32 Morlocks, which at our level was very easy. Very, very easy, but it wasn't as easy when we had all those stupid researchers who...
And you had to, So it was supposed to be like a social encounter to gain access to the area, followed by like a series of increasingly difficult encounters ending in a boss. But it started with the hardest encounter, then the reverse dungeon that was an escort mission. To protect your people, and then in the end the social encounter was basically just like, we solved the problem.
Yep. Because you're supposed to get the Hell Knights to let you go in, and I was playing a Hell Knight, I was not the one who scryed or teleported, and so I was like, I'm from the Order of the Gate, and we came to solve your problem, which we did, so do you want to claim that the efficiency of the Hell Knights and the Chelaxian government is just so is not efficient, which is a capital crime in Cheliax, or do you want to admit that it's very efficient and faster than you would have expected, and that Order of the Gate solved your problem for you?
And they were like, that was faster than we would have expected. Good work.
So let's take a look at what wizards can do with their feats, because wizards' feats can really let you do a lot. Hey, welcome. So wizards' feats are pretty much all of them are tied into their magic, right? So there's Counterspell. That's one that, like, it doesn't always come up, but when it does, it's extremely powerful, because it's just a reaction, and if you have the same spell, then you know that they're using it, and you just nix it. And another example, our wizard went through some pretty substantial, hoops to get heal on his spell list. I think that was just to use staves, though, because he actually used a higher level counterspell feat so that he could also counterspell higher level heals, because he got first level heal, but not the higher level heightened ones with human onto his spell list. And so he and our cleric, who had taken multi-class to get counterspell, managed to counterspell like a double heal that these summoned angels were going to do on a boss, and just like, that boss got so wrecked. Like, you guys disrupted his miracle, and then you beat the crap out of him, and his angels were going to heal him back to full, and you countered all of those heals, and then you just killed him.
Yep.
He got to do nothing.
Yeah, I remember you were talking about, it's like, it's one of those GM moments where it's like, it's slightly disappointing because you prepare like this like awesome bad guy that doesn't get to do anything, but it's mostly just like hilarious because of the pieces you managed to pull. It
was fine. You guys had a really epic battle in another one of the fights that was like right after that, and it was just hilarious. So wizards can summon a familiar. They can a universalist can get Hand of the Apprentice, which can throw your weapon and use your intelligence to do some pretty significant damage. Reach Spell is one a lot of people sleep on, but that is very, very strong, because It's one action to get you 30 feet more range. And you might be like, well, I could move 30 feet for an action. And it's like, sure, but then you're there and you're not where you started, right? And so yeah, you could move 30 feet forward towards the enemy and cast it, but it's a lot safer not to do that. And in situations where you want to be 30 feet away, then you move. So it gives you the option to stay in a superior location, and it's very useful for that. Spellbook Prodigy, so you can add spells to your spellbook more easily. Widen Spell widens the area just a bit, which can be a good trump card to have in hand, so that you're like, oh wait, if I widen this, it would catch 2 more creatures this time. Okay, I'm gonna do that. Cantrip expansion to get more cantrips. Conceal Spell, that's the one we were talking about, where the wizard was concealing the spells that he was casting. He upgraded it to Silent Spell later on.
And Rex is talking about Wizard Friend casting Magic Weapon from outside the hazard instead of risking his life. Yes, Reach Magic Weapon is really nice at levels. You don't have to get up in the fray, but you can buff people.
100%. Energy Ablation to make a protective barrier when you cast spells. Enhanced Familiars for better familiars. Non-lethal spell, just 2nd level, and you can make sure your spells aren't going to kill people. That's really nice. Bespell Weapon, if you like attacking people, you can, as a free action, gather energy from your spells to make your attacks stronger. Call bonded items, so you can like make your bonded item come back to you. Linked Focus is an interesting one. That's where when you drain your bonded item to cast a spell of your arcane pool, you get a focus point back. Now that's for someone who's a school specialist, and or actually it's just once per day, so you can do it as a universalist too. I knew you couldn't do it like every time with a universalist when you get a bunch of them. Silent Spell, that's the upgrade of Conceal Spell, where it doesn't even make any noise, so you don't have to hide it behind talking and other noises. Convincing Illusion, where you use deception to try to convince people not to disbelieve your illusion, is super strong, because illusions are already a good action waster. Spell Penetration, where you can get rid of 1 point of your enemy's status bonus against spells.
Yeah, we've got a lot of that going on with illusory like walls and cages and stuff like that in the Hell's Rebels game that we're playing in right now, where we've got like all sorts of like, oh yeah, is this it wastes turns of the enemies left and right.
Yep, and Zathos points out having more cantrips gives you a huge flexibility increase over having fewer, and you're right, Zathos, you don't want to sleep on cantrip expansion.
One of the strategies we've talked about for that character is like creating illusions of higher level spells, so that eventually the enemies will have a thing where they learn like, oh yeah, the enemy organization will learn, oh yeah, that's fake. That's just an illusion. They always do that. And then someday it's a real spell. Mm-hmm. So that like it's sometimes an illusion and a lower level illusion and sometimes the real spell, and they know that they have to treat it like the real spell because it might be the real spell.
Because he makes fake blade barriers, and so imagine it's a real blade barrier and they're just, I'm gonna walk into this, it's obviously fake.
Yeah.
Whoops, it wasn't. So Split Shot, you could prepare 2 spells in the slots. It is pretty handy because you can then choose which one you're gonna cast, and then it dissipates. So it gives you a little more flexibility. Steady spell casting, so your spells don't get interrupted as much. I'm not usually one who is worried too much about the worst case scenario where the enemy actually has a reaction to disrupt my spells, but if you're risk averse, steady spell casting can give you a pretty decent 30% chance to keep the spell from the disruption, so you might want it.
Well, you tend to be more of the type of player who would use reach spell to make sure you weren't right up in that front line to be able to be disrupted in the
I'm not even saying I'm not a risk-averse player. I'm just saying that I try to plan 3 steps ahead so that I don't get in that situation with one of the few monsters that is going to disrupt my spells. But you're right, Linda. Advanced School Spell can give you a special advanced spell for your school. Bond Conservation is a neat one. That one is going to allow you to spend an action to just keep casting spells after you drain your bonded item. And It's especially interesting for universalists who have a lot of drain bonded items. They can just like you kind of just go on a spree of recasting spells. They do have to be 2 levels lower each time, but if you had this, you could be like, oh yeah, I'm a universalist, 9th level, then I'll take a free 7th, then 5th, then 3rd, then 1st, and that only used up 1. So you still could do 8th level, then I'll take a 3 6th, then 4th, then 2nd.
Yes.
And then you could just keep doing that, which is pretty. As I was saying, wizards are the undisputed masters or legends of just having so many spells. Form retention, so you can change into a weaker polymorph form for a longer time. Universal versatility, you can learn one of the other school's spells and change it around. You don't get the advanced spell though. Overwhelming energy, so you can get through energy resistances, which can be pretty handy because energy resistances are very annoying, and it basically adds your level to damage if the enemy has that much resistance. Quicken casting is one that gets overlooked because it's once per day, but it is so blatantly powerful during that once per day that it can change the course of the entire encounter. Our wizard had that in War for the Crown, and he would use it in hard encounters to do some kind of like obscenely powerful turn. It's just so good to get your 2 best spells out together, and Quicken Casting allows that. Then there's Scroll Savant. That's another one of the ones I was talking about where the wizard could just have an absurd number of spells because it's giving you spells, right? And you're getting 2 scrolls that are at most 2 levels lower than your highest level spell and of different levels. So you're level 11, say, and you have 6 level spells, you get a 4th and a 3rd. If you're master, then you also get a 2nd. Of course, you'd be level 13, so you get a 5th, a 4th, and a 3rd.
Yeah, and if you're legendary,
then you get a 4th one. So
Yeah.
of course, at that point, you would have 10th level spells. So you would get 8th, 7th, 6th, and 5th. That is just a lot of spells that you're getting with the wizard. Clever counterspell, that's the one our wizard used. You can counter with
and if you're a universalist and you have that bonded item expansion.
Yep. And if you're a specialist, you get one of your school every time. Clever counterspell, you can counter with a similar spell from like the same school or something that's like the opposite as well. And so that is one our wizard used to counter a bunch of enemy spells. Diviner Senses, where you kind of use detect magic, and if you find that the enemies have magic on them, you roll initiative twice. Forcible Energy, where your energies are going to make the enemies gain weakness to that damage type, which can be very handy if your allies have like weapon runes of that damage type. Magic Sense, so you're always sensing magic. Bonded Focus, and that can basically give you your 2nd focus point that is recovered when you refocus. Very, very handy for casting multiple focus spells during a 10-minute period. Reflect Spell, when you counterspell, you knock it back towards them. Shift Spell.
It's from, Fist of the Ruby Phoenix.
That's from Fist of the Ruby Phoenix. Yeah, I guess we mostly do Advanced Player's Guide and core rulebooks, but I'm looking at all. Yeah, let's not do the ones that are from other places. Superior Bond is when you draw upon your bond, you can drain an arcane item, a bonded item 1 additional time today, but the spell has to be 2 or more levels lower than your highest level slot. Yet another additional spell that you can pull out. Effortless Concentration is amazing if you cast concentration spells because it basically allows you to get a free action every turn to concentrate on them. So
absolutely. Secrets of Magic, Zathos is going to add quite a bit here as well.
In terms of spells, yeah, absolutely. Spell Tinker lets you just remake the choices of spells where you make choices in the middle of the spell by cutting off half its duration, which is pretty hilarious. Infinite Possibilities is a good one. You pick a spell slot that just can have any spell that's 2 levels lower than the slot you designated. And it's just the one that you wanted it to have. You don't have to prepare it. Just when you cast it, you're like, yeah, my book has 150 spells that this could be.
It'll be
that's
whatever
just gonna
one
be
we
the
need
one
in the
that
moment.
we want.
Mhm.
Re-prepare spell is one where you just kind of spend 10 minutes and re-prepare in a slot that is 4th level or lower, and it has to not have a duration. So because, well, you know, there's some spells that have a duration that is more than 10 minutes, which is what it takes to re-prepare
Yes.
them, and you could just kind of infinity those otherwise. But it's very nice for quick acting, sort of instantaneous 4th or lower level spells. You can just keep preparing them over and over. Second chance spells for enchanters. When your spell just doesn't work, you could just do it again, and you don't lose the slot. Archwizard's Might gives you another 10th level spell slot. Always handy. Yet more spells. Everybody has that one, though.
We're at 20th level now.
Everybody has something like that if they're a spellcaster. But Wizards have just had it all throughout. And Meta Magic Mastery, where you can do your one action Meta Magics as free actions. Huge gain if you have a lot of those and you want to use spell combination. Really, really strong. You take 2 spells, and you combine them into one spell. And the spells have to be lower level than the slots level, but that doesn't matter because the combined spells are super strong and they can apply together against the enemy. And just imagine the kind of things you can do to them with a spell combination. And then Spell Mastery is really neat. It's another one of those. But what if I have a million spell slots? Instead of a 10th level spell, you can get a 9th, 8th, 7th, and 6th level spell. That, both very tempting, because I like 10th level spells a lot. But if you have Spell Mastery, right, and then you have the Scroll Feat, and you have none of the other things that I mentioned that give you more spells, just between the 2 of those, you get 9th, 8th, 7th, 6th, 6th, 5th, 4th, 3rd.
Yeah.
Right?
And for this one, you pick specific spells, but you can also retrain them during downtime.
Uh-huh.
So you could pick your favorites.
Oh, wait, actually, I think the scroll one, now that I'm thinking about it, is even... Let me see. No, it's even better than that, because there are 2 or low. So you get 9th, 8th, 7th, 6th, 8th, 7th, 6th, 5th. So you wind up with, 5 8th level spells per day and 7th, which, compare that to other casters, and like I was saying, that's almost double at that point. Sorry, 6, right? Because you have 3, then you have the specialist one, or the extra from your bonded item, and then you have the scroll, and then you have the one from that. So you're basically 2 spellcasters worth of spells at that point. Wizards are just very, very good at getting more and more spells. So the interesting thing about Wizards, because of that, is that more than any other class, like we saw with those slots that can just hold every spell adding more spells to the game can inherently make Wizards more powerful at a faster rate, because they can have more of them, and they can have access to more of them, and they can cast more of them. Whereas, for a Druid, it's that's nice, but, I also want things that make my animal companion stronger, maybe, or my wild shape, or something else. But with the Wizard, it's no, more spells, more wizardry. And just those 2 feats alone, and in a lot of the important slots, you're getting up to double the Druids and Bards number of spells, and that's glossing over the fact that we also had, what was that other one where you get an extra use of your bonded item on your second highest. So if you think about that, right? So we're a specialist, okay, and we took Spell Mastery, so we do only have the 1 10th level spell. We'll admit we don't have more of that than other people. But at 9th level, we've got 3 normally. We're a specialist for 4. We've got a bonded item, right? So we've got that. We've got Spell Mastery for 6. So we've got 6. So we're just literally double from Spell Mastery. Then at 8th level, if we took that one for the extra bonded item that has to be at a level or more lower, we've actually got 3. the specialist spell. We've got a scroll in there. We've got spell mastery and the bonded item. So we've got 7, and it's more than double. At that point, we're almost double the sorcerer, who was like, I thought I had the same number as wizard, like in theory, and the wizard's like, no, you poor dear. You
and I
do
guess
not
if you
have
were,
the same
if you
number
were,
as
if you
I
had
do.
chosen the spell blending thesis, you could trade. You could, if you wanted more higher level spells, you could do that
Yes,
trade as well.
and the staff nexus can actually do some really interesting trade-offs in order to have flexibility from the staff that can give you a lot of interesting spell combinations as well. Those two are both great for that, and you can get the thesis that lets you re-prepare different spells in the slots when you need a different one. That's what our wizard had, so he could re-prepare that knock when they needed it. There's like, when you have that many slots and abilities that even let you re-prepare in the slots or manipulate the slots in different ways.
Yeah, like the meta magic one, who's gonna have a lot more meta magic to play around with.
But here's another punch from Secrets of Magic that we weren't kind of that Zathos may have been thinking of, right? So there's the flexible preparation where it's like, okay, you gave up one of your spells of every level at a lot of levels, sometimes not at your highest level, because your spells don't go up from 2 to 3, right? That's what was said at PaizoCon. It's not out yet. But now think about that. If you're a druid and you're like, okay, that's a third of my spells, and then you know what? It is. It's a third of your spells. Not at the level when you first, not at odd levels. Your best spell you don't lose. But even levels, yeah, it's a third of your spells. And in exchange for that, you have this pool of spells that you could just flexibly cast from that is very strong, but you lose a lot of spells. If you're the wizard and you're like, okay, oh, boo-hoo, we just figured I had 7 8th level spells. I guess I lose one of those 7. And now I can cast from this giant pool of spells. Now, admittedly, like, some of the things that we're doing are on scrolls or recasts from a bonded item, so it's not gonna make our pool of spells bigger on that other thing, but even so, it's like, you think about it, there's a reason that the most famous version of that is probably, like, the wizard version, that's the Arcanist, because of the fact that wizards just don't care as much that they lost, and they still do care, because wizards, obviously, they want all the spells.
All the spells.
It's just like, no, I do not want to give up one of my 7 spells.
Although you know, I think that for me it's gonna be hard to compete with the cuteness of having an improved familiar. So.
Oh yeah, and there is the familiar thesis. So yeah, wizards are really neat because of how many spells they have, and just the more creative you are with your spells, and the better you are able to use spells and think about which spells your group needs, like the examples we gave of the wizard in our group where he just was really on it, wizard's gonna be strong. Now, if you're like in my high school group where our wizard was mimetically the cleric made fun of the wizard for never having the right spells prepared in any situation, and the wizard just constantly messed everything up to the point that, like, we have hours worth of stories from our group, which Linda wasn't in, but she knows the stories, of just how much the wizard messed everything up. Like, that is the other end of the wizard, and that was a 3.5 game that we were playing in at the end of high school, right? But and this is Pathfinder 2nd. It's still true if you were playing a wizard and you don't kind of you don't really have a plan for what you're going to do with the spells, then you can wind up with spells that are not great. Like, you're like, I'm going to prepare only Cone of Cold, but we're going to like, the Frost Giant Fortress. Yes! I'll out-cold those Frost Giants. Maybe we should roll Recall Knowledge on Frost Giants. I don't need to know that I'm going to show them who's the real Frozen.
And then you come in the Frost Giants, it's like, well, thank you for thickening the walls of our home. Oh, were you actually intending to attack me?
Daniel Merciless says that flexible spellcasting probably helps a lot with the wizard normally requiring so much system mastery for preparing spells. Just in general, Vancian casting can require some amount of system mastery to have the right spells prepared. Flexible spellcasting gives you an amazing ability to just cast whatever you want. And so it puts you in a situation where you did lose a lot of your spell slots. And so, well, you know, at the very low end where you still can't really figure out what to prepare even to a lesser extent, you lose the spell slots and you maybe didn't prepare that great of spells anyway and you don't get much. But kind of like in the middle, you're going to get a huge advantage. Like the middle low, where it's like, yeah, I can never prepare things in just the right slot, but I vaguely know what some spells that are good. That's good for flexible. Then you get a little better to where you're like, in System Mastery, where you're like, I know what slots to prepare them in, and I'd rather have more spells. For most classes, for Wizards, just like, I have so many spells, whatever. And then that one could probably go back to the prepared, the normal prepared Wizard, and then you get to the Super Master people who are like, I know exactly which spells to take advantage of the fact that I can heighten them to any level to get additional bang for my buck. And I can carefully craft a list of a smaller number of spells and combine that with other features that will get me through with my slots. And those people get the most, again, out of flexible casting, even if they're playing a class like the Druid. So, or the Bard. So it's very interesting because it's like, I think it's a state change that goes through 5 different states of which one is better for which. And it shows that, like, there's... like, it's a trade-off. You get a huge amount, and you give a huge amount. And so, you're not probably going to be neutral about whether you want to make that trade-off, whatever class you are. But as we've seen in this video, I think Garrett says it's System Mastery Sandwich. Yeah, as we've seen in this video, Wizard is in really the best place to do it of any of the prepared clusters because they have so many spells. And that's just basically what the Wizard is. And the Wizard feats are, like, often spoken of as being, like, kind of quiet. It's like, where's the flashy ones that do, like, some big thing? And they do have a few of those. But really, they quietly muster this army of spell slots into you.
And then the spell slots are the things that do the flashy stuff.
Yes. And so, like, do not sleep on the quiet power to have twice as many as other people do, and, like, almost twice as many as the sorcerer who's supposed to be on par with you, because that is its own power of versatility, flexibility, sort of durability and length of adventuring day, that really adds, and just, like Zathos says, grows stronger as the edition continues, and you can have more spells because there's more spells that exist. So that is the secret strength of Wizards. I mean, it's not really a secret of Magic, because it is literally in there, but you do have to think about it, and you do have to wonder why, like, there's some people who are like, Wizards are the strongest, look at what they're doing, and other people are like, I don't see the flashy moves, and they're both right, because Wizards are, they're not subtle in what they do, but they're subtle in how they build up their power to do it. And the way they do it is grabbing tons of spell slots and thinking about how they're going to use their spells in certain ways. So that's the Wizard. We usually talk at the very end about the multi-class archetype. And I'm now realizing that we did not, like, get a screen cap of that one. I was thinking, is there a second thing to get a screen cap of at the beginning when we got the Wizard? And then I was like, no, I guess there isn't. But I really think there is.
Yes,
and
that's
there
right,
was.
the multi-class.
The multi-class. So Wizard multi-class, we don't have to go very long into it because it's just like we've seen with the other spellcaster multi-classes, pretty much exactly. You start off, you grab some cantrips, you can prepare from your spellbook, then you can either pick up your Arcane School spell from your School of Magic. It does only choose the Arcane School at level 4 with the Arcane School spell, and probably should choose a school at level 2 when you first take it, like every other multi-class does, where you, like, I chose a school but gained no benefit from it, kind of like choosing a bloodline for Sorcerer Dedication. But whatevs, you can get a 1st or 2nd level Wizard feat with Basic Arcana, and then higher level Wizard feats with Advanced Arcana. And then it has basic Wizard, Spellcasting, Expert, and Master, exactly the same as you'll see in our series for the other spellcasters. and advanced, or no, arcane breadth, which is like the breadth that they have for all of the other spellcasters as well. So it very much follows the mold for multi-class spellcasting. It's a solid multi-class for spellcasting if you want it, especially due to the fact that you have all of those wizardry things you can do with your multi-class spells. And of course, if you are a wizard and you're like, Mark, but you told me about the extra spells I could get, and
here's our multi-class wizard to.
There we go. That's our multi-class wizard, and you're like, I was intrigued by the extra spells I could get, but I was thinking, not every level that you told me gave me extra spells. Are there some way I could have even more spells that are arcane spells? Then you could like multi-class arcane sorcerer or witch or something like that, and then grab even more spells onto your wizard, and just be like, now I have all the spells. And then your GM is like, oh, I gave you free archetype, and you used it to get even more spells, and now you have how many spells? And you're like, no, now I do have 8 spells at some of those top spell levels, and I do have twice as many as the sorcerer does.
Yes, I do.
I'm almost 3 times as much as you, druid and bard. And the bard is like, listen, my composition cantrips are so good. They are so good. And the wizard is like, they are really good. I wish I had those too. Can I have them too? And the bard's like, no, that's my thing. And the wizard's like, I guess I could have multi-class bard, huh? And then I could get some of your composition cantrips. The bard's like, no, leave me my composition cantrips. You have 3 times as many spells almost. So, yeah, that's it. That's the wizard. So, I hope you all enjoyed the core rulebook classes. And the next class we'll do for Clash Tide is going to be Investigator, the first one from the Advanced Player's Guide. So let's say goodbye to YouTube.
Yes, let's.
Bye, YouTube.
Bye.